All right, welcome everybody. It's great to see you all, and welcome back to Mussar Mondays. And it is a pleasure to be learning with you this important topic. We started 2 weeks ago, and last week we had Tisha B'Av, the 9th of Av, which is an important fast day commemorating a lot of the devastating tragedies that befell the Jewish people. And now I'll welcome Ed, Jorge, Ravanda, Rafael, Bobby, and Davida. Welcome. Okay, so we're about to begin. Okay, here we go. So last week we spoke about carrying your friend's burden, and we spoke about the importance of understanding that, you know, we're very in touch with our own needs. We're in touch with what we like, what we don't like, when we're hungry, when we're thirsty, when we're tired. We know all of these things very, very intimately, very well about ourselves. But are we in tune to the needs of other people as well? And that's what we're going to try to learn from what we see here in the words of our sages, and try to incorporate this into our daily lives. So let's take an example that we'll work with throughout the evening. Okay. So imagine when we talk about charity. So we think, charity, that's a great place to share the burden with someone else. Why? Because with charity, it makes a lot of sense. I'm able to help someone else. I understand what their needs are, and boom, perfect. I have their needs. But what's about someone who doesn't need our kindness, who doesn't need our charity? Someone who's a wealthy person. Do they fall into this category as well? Will they need perhaps someone to feel their situation as well? Someone who will help carry their burden. So that's what we're going to try to deal with today. Now we left off last time with who was the leader of the Jewish people, the greatest prophet ever. We know is Moses. And what's so incredible about Moses is that we see that Moses had this quality to perfection. Moses had the quality of being empathetic, feeling the pain of other people, and doing not only later on doing what he can to help them, but at least feeling their pain. You know, we see that it says that Moses left the palace of Pharaoh, and he saw the needs of his brethren. He saw the needs of his brethren. Was he able to do anything about it? No, they're in slavery. What can he do? He can't do much. But Vayar b'sivlotam, he was able to see their plight. He was able to see their challenge. And that is the most important part of tonight's topic, is can we see out of ourselves, can we get out of our own skin and get to someone else? And that's what we're going to try to do. Okay, so I mentioned we left off last time with the story of how my grandfather, my great-grandfather of blessed memory, Rabbi Avraham Gudzinski, his students once saw him dancing in his office. So they asked him, "What are you dancing?" He says, "Well, one of my students is in a faraway land, and he is now getting married. Now is his wedding. So, yeah, I can't be at that wedding, but at least I can dance. I can feel his joy. I can be there with him." So, and, you know, it's sometimes easier for us to feel someone else's sadness, but how about feeling someone else's joy? That's not something which is always easy, to feel someone else's joy, to feel someone else's happiness. Now we see there's an incredible reward for someone who is able to feel the pain of another person. You know, the Talmud states a very interesting thing. It says that anyone who prays for his friend, he will benefit first. So if, let's say, you know someone is looking for a job. Now you're looking for a job too. right? You know, someone else is looking for to find their love in their life. They're looking for a soulmate. You're also looking for a soulmate, perhaps. So our sages tell us a great trick in the Talmud: pray for them, and then you'll benefit first. Now, the Talmud says, 1 second. So then everybody's going to be praying for someone else just so that they can benefit first. And the Talmud says, go right ahead. Go right ahead. Go pray for someone else. That means if you can care enough about someone else that you're ready to pray for them, go right ahead. The reward will be is that you'll benefit first. Now, what do we take out from this? What we take out from this is that there's an incredible importance to thinking about other people. What are their needs? Now, a higher level of that would be, what is their needs, even if it's not my needs? But on a very simplistic level, what is their needs? And perhaps they're the same needs as my own. So if a person, God forbid, is ill, and they know someone else is ill, think about it. It takes some strength to be able to pray for someone else who has that illness, to think beyond your own pain. You have a great celebration in your family. Think of someone else who has that celebration and be joyous with them, even without them knowing. Now, there's actually an organization which is dedicated to this Talmud, which is to pray for someone else. And what they do is they pair up people to pray for someone else who's in the exact same situation. So whether it's health issues, whether it's, like we said before, they're looking to settle down and find their mate. This organization, you tell them what you're seeking, and they match someone that you pray for, and that person prays for you. And it brings tremendous blessing to the world, the fact that we're able to think about someone else. And that's really what we want to get to. So now this requires patience, it requires sensitivity to help people, even if they have different personalities than us, if they have different leanings towards us, they don't vote the way that we vote, you still to feel someone else's condition. There's an interesting story I want to share with you. I heard this from my rabbi many years ago. So he's about to start the class, the lecture, and everyone is seated, and they're about to begin. And the last two guys come to the class, and they're scrambling, looking for a spot. They can't find a seat. They can't find a chair. So they both run out the door, and they both find themselves a chair from a different room, and they bring it in, and they sit down. The rabbi sees this. The rabbi's waiting. And the rabbi closes the Talmud. This is Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, the leader, the Rosh Yeshiva of the great Mir Yeshiva. He closes his Talmud that he was about to start teaching. And he says, today we're going to learn about what true kindness is. And he says, the two of you both went to get a chair. But the two of you also noticed that the other one needed a chair. And yet, you each, instead of bringing the chair for the other, you brought the chair for yourself. So, you think about it. What's the big deal? I mean, they're just getting themselves a chair, right? But were you thinking only about yourself, or could have you also thought about your friend? And you bring the chair for him, and he bring the chair for you. You're doing the same action, but you can do it for someone else. And that's what we're trying to attain with this trait of carrying your friend's burden, whatever that burden is. It's the same burden as yours. Great. So share that same burden. Okay? There's another story I want to share also from Rabbi Shmulevitz. I'll just to give you a little bit of how it works in the yeshiva system. So what happens is that, you're in yeshiva, you're learning what everyone is learning, but at the beginning of every semester, generally there was something which is called a chavrusa tumult. Right? A chavrusa is a study partner, and there's a tumult where basically you're looking for the right study partner, because think about it, a learning semester in yeshiva could be 6 months long, That's from Sukkot all the way till Passover, till Pesach. And that could be a long period of time, and you could be learning with this individual for 8 hours a day, right? So you think about it, that's a serious commitment of partnership to learn with someone. And many times it happens that you thought the partner would be a good learning partner, and then it falls apart. One is a little smarter than the other, another one is quicker than the other, and you have one has a deeper way of thinking, so it doesn't work out. The question is, what do you do? Now it's 2 weeks in, there aren't readily available study partners. What are you going to do now? So one of the students once came to Rabbi Shmulevitz, also of the Mir Yeshiva, and he says, "What do I do? It's not working out with my study partner. What do you recommend I do?" So the rabbi said, "Listen, you need to learn, and you need to grow, and you need to be a great sage. Great, you can go change, but I want you to know something. That for the rest of this semester, your friend is going to be sitting alone, and he's not going to have a study partner, and he's going to be embarrassed every time someone asks him, 'Oh, where's your study partner?' 'Oh, he dumped me after 2 weeks,' right?" He says, when you're dealing with someone else's feelings, you're playing with fire. When you're dealing with someone else's feelings, with someone else's emotions, with someone else's character, with someone else's self-worth, it's playing with fire. And it's such an important thing for us to constantly remember this idea, this principle, that if we are very, very conscious about ourselves, we know what we like, we know what we don't like, we know how we want people to treat us, we know how we want people to act towards us, but how about the way we act towards other people? And we need to be so cognizant and conscious that this could cause someone pain for the next 6 to 8 months. Or, right, 6 months. They're going to be sitting alone. They're not going to have a study partner. Right? So the rabbi, you want to go learn and be a great sage, great. But just know you're playing with fire, because it's dealing with, you're going to hurt someone else. You can imagine that most of the students chose not to change their study partner because of that. And you know what? You stick with it and you'll be successful regardless. And we know the difference between Hillel and Shammai. Hillel always let Shammai speak first. And as a result, we see that the law was decided on the side of Hillel. The majority of times we see that the law goes according to the side of Hillel, to the school of Hillel. And that was part of how they treated their fellow. They said, "You know what? You speak first. We want to hear your opinion. We don't need to display our opinion. We'll get there. First you speak yours." So again, it's not about me, it's about someone else. Listen to someone else's opinion and understand it before you reply. You think about what goes on today in television, what goes on today in the political world. They have these panels, and everyone is a maven, and everyone knows and everyone understands. But that's not really true, because there are different opinions, and no one's listening to those differing opinions. Everyone's there to display their opinion, and it's the only opinion that counts. They're not listening to anybody else. And you know what? If someone says a piece of truth, that's a good point. No one's going to stop and say, something, I was wrong. You don't see that. What, you convinced me. No, I'm coming with my opinion, and only my opinion counts here. And I'm going to win this debate, and I'm going to win this panel discussion. So we need to learn, as part of this, to train ourselves to listen to someone else's opinion and to understand someone else's opinion. Okay? Bear the yoke of friendship. It's an incredible message that our sages tell us. We need to do more to welcome other people's opinions into our lives. Again, it doesn't mean we have to agree, but look at what other people are experiencing. You can learn so much by just listening to other people. Right? You'll learn an amazing amount about other people. Now, you think about the mitzvah of comforting the mourners. What's the mitzvah of comforting the mourners? Right? There's nothing you can do to change their situation. There's absolutely nothing except for feeling their loss. You can be there. And the halacha tells us that when someone goes to visit the house of a mourner, you're not supposed to talk. You as a guest, just listen. Be there for them. Right? Again, there's nothing you can do. They lost a parent, they lost a child, they lost a sibling. There's nothing you can do. You can't bring them back. But you can be there for them. Just hear them out. Feel their pain. Be there with them. That's the responsibility. That's what we're trying to learn here. As Jewish people, not only we see this from our leader, but we see this as part of our obligation to one another. Is that we say, Kol Yisrael Arevim Zel Hazeh, that every Jew is responsible for one another. We are responsible for one another. So when Jews in Argentina are being expelled, what do? We don't just say, you know what, it's the problem of the Jews in Argentina. No, it's our problem. It's our family. It's our brethren. When Jews are facing a challenge anywhere in the world, we don't say, God forbid there's a terrorist attack in Israel. Right? We don't say, oh, you know what, it's the Israelis' problem. If we would live there, it'd be our problem. No. That would be a heartless thing to say. It's our problem. Why? Because we're one. We're one nation. It's like, think of it. You're cutting your vegetables, and by mistake you cut your finger. Right? You cut a finger. Does that hand now take the knife and cut the other finger from the other hand? No, you're part of one body. As people, we are one people. And we feel the pain of one another. Now, this is obviously the case, it says, there's a story that's told about, again, we're going back to Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz. This was one of his great traits, but he would say, every Kol Nidre, which is the eve of Yom Kippur, he would stand and give his opening sermon for Yom Kippur. And he would say the following. He would say that if you haven't lost a night worrying about your brethren, about the Jewish people, he says, then what are you coming to Yom Kippur for? He says, you're kidding? The Jewish people are suffering? And by the way, I know we feel very comfortable. We live in Houston, Texas, or in Passaic, New Jersey, where I'm at right now. And people think like, oh, everything is perfect. Nobody has a worry. They have a worry about, how they're going to pay their bills, perhaps. They have a worry about, they're going to get a better job. They're going to get a raise. People are running around busy with a lot of things. But are we concerned that we're having terrible tragedies in the Jewish community? All over the world. Not only in Houston, not only in New York, New Jersey area, everywhere. Jews are faced with challenges. Are we able to open up our hearts to just feel what other people are experiencing? So Reb Chaim Shmulevitz, the great Rosh Yeshiva from the Mir Yeshiva, said, if you haven't lost a night worrying about the situation of the Jewish people, then what are you coming to God for? What are you asking for? It's something to think about. Are we concerned about other people? Are we thinking about what other people are lacking? Or what other people, I got a receipt on one of my, went to a supermarket here, and in the back of the receipt it says that, there are many families that are poor and that are hungry and that can't do, you start thinking about that. We might not see it on a regular day-to-day basis, but it should hit our heart. You know what? Maybe there's something I can do for other people. Right? Now, the next step would be what we can do, but first is feel the pain. First is think into what those people are experiencing. Imagine those families that perhaps open up a refrigerator and don't have anything there. Right? We're not talking about the action. We're talking about the thought, about feeling someone else's pain, someone else's plight. Right? We know that our sages tell us that we shouldn't judge someone till we're standing in their place. And that's part of this, is that if we can't feel someone else's situation, someone else's joy or plight, then how can we judge anyone? We can't judge anyone, because we don't know what it means to stand in someone else's place. So we need to teach ourselves that. The Talmud says something very interesting. The Talmud says that we have to show a countenance, a smile to our fellow. we see someone, we have to smile. We have to show them a joy. And I can say about my great-grandfather, Rabbi Avraham Grudzinsky, that they said about him that he worked on this trait of ha'arat panim, of showing a shine, a glow, a countenance to your fellow, in every situation, by the way. It took him 2 years to perfect this trait. Now we've talked all this year, we've talked every Monday about a different trait, and some traits we did for 2 weeks, like this trait, and that just touches the surface of each trait. And we mentioned that in the introduction, that there's only that much we can cover on a Facebook Live video. But these really take, to perfect each of these traits, really takes a lifetime. And here, my great-grandfather, Rabbi Avraham Grudzinsky, worked on the trait of ha'arat panim, greeting every person with a smile at all times. Imagine when you're nervous. Imagine when you're stressed, when you're frustrated, when you're tired, and you're on top of the sukkah, bolting it in, and your neighbor comes and is nudging you about something, and you're just like, can you just leave me alone? Right? In every situation, to always have a smile for your fellow, to always greet someone with a smile. Now, where does this come from? This comes from this trait that we're talking about here today. Carrying your friend's burden. You don't know what's going through the other person. And that smile may change everything. That may be a complete game changer for that person. But taking that into consideration, in every area of life, that even if you're stressed about something, you're concerned about something, but what's the other person experiencing right now? Right? So, we see that in the Talmud, that many of our sages, they would always try to see their friends, the opposing view's perspective. You see with Rava and Abaya, the Talmud tells us that they would say, maybe the truth is with them. And they would go back and forth arguing their friend's side. Maybe my friend is right. And even if you're certain that you're right, still we don't gloat about it. We just correct them. Right? So if you're in a disagreement with someone, right, and today, sadly, it's become a sport. Politics has become a sport, a blood sport almost, for people. And if you don't vote like me, if you don't think like me, if you don't, so then people find that they have nothing else to talk about with them. That's it. Don't talk to me, and it's a terrible thing. We should have much more to talk about, and maybe there's something that's right, maybe there's something that's wrong, but at least let's talk. Let's open up that conversation, and let's find an understanding to why the other person sees it that way, right? Okay, now we know that if you do have a disagreement with someone, and if you don't like their opinion, and if you think that they're wrong, it still is no reason for there to be a quarrel, right? And not necessarily do you have to say something, for the sake of peace. Sometimes for the sake of peace we just keep quiet. We don't say anything, right? But it's important to remember that our goal here, right? So imagine there's a wealthy person. They don't need your money, and they don't need your kindness. What do they need? What do they need? Perhaps they need someone to listen to them. Perhaps they need someone who they can talk things over with. Perhaps they need someone who will just be there with them. Right? So yeah, it's easier when you can just give charity and you're done with it. That's not what it's about. I'll share with you. A friend of mine told me that what he does when people come to his door to collect charity, and in the tri-state area this is much more frequent, but in Houston we have many, probably 5 or 6 times every month that people are coming to the at least in my neighborhood, in 400 Southwest and in Meyerland, people come to collect charity for various charities across the globe. Jewish causes. And this individual told me, he says, what I do is I'll take $10 or $20, throw it out the door, and close the door. And he asked me, is that the wrong thing to do? I said, why do you do that? He said, the reason I do it is because I don't want to waste their time. They're coming in thinking, I'm going to make all this money, here's this guy who's going to support me. He says, I have my own causes I need to support, and I'm not here to support other causes, and therefore, I don't want to waste their time. So, I said, it's a very, very righteous reason, but that's not the way we act. We don't act in a way of kicking people out the door. When someone comes, we talk to them, and the Talmud, the Torah tells us, Luben shinai michalav. You know what a poor person wants? More than he wants the milk that you're going to give him to drink, the glass of milk, more than he wants that glass of milk, he wants the white of your teeth. He wants your smile. That's what he wants. So, yeah, it's very nice. You don't want to waste his time, but he's a human being. Listen to his story. Cry with him. Feel his pain. Okay, you can only give him $10. You can only give him $20. That's fine. That's not the issue. That's not the issue. The issue is listen to him. Hear his story. Hear him out. Feel his pain. Right? So I think it's a critical point that we need to recognize. It's not about finding the solutions. It's about hearing out another person. Right? Even if you're a man of power, right? Share the pain of your city. Right? It says that in a time where the community is suffering, so if there's a flood, we've had floods in Houston, or there are communities that have experienced tornadoes or hurricanes or earthquakes, right? In a time when a community is in pain, a person is not allowed to say, "Peace unto me." As long as I'm fine, everything is fine. And there are other halachic restrictions that are prohibited to a couple. It says that a married couple, should avoid intimacy during that time as well. How can you go and have an enjoyable time when your community is suffering? Right? So we see that there is a halachic element to feeling the pain with our fellow mankind. Right? It's wrong for one's soul to say, it's okay with me. As long as I'm safe, I'm good, my family is good, it's fine. Right? So we see that the Jewish cops, the Jewish police, out of pity, this is in Egypt, we know that, what did the Egyptians do? By the way, the Germans did the same thing. They would appoint Jews to be the cops over the Jews. And they would make the Jews, be responsible to hit their fellow Jews. And what did the Jewish people do out of pity? They didn't hit their fellow. I can't hit my fellow Jew. I can't. It's my job, it's true. And I'll be hit for it. I'll be hit. I'm not going to hit my fellow Jew. Right? So we see, and the Egyptians, by the way, were punished for this dearly. For trying to force one family member on another family member, i.e., one Jew on another Jew. That's a terrible thing. So, to acquire Torah, we need a good heart. Feeling one's pain is a good heart. A good heart. We know that we see that the students of one of the sages, he asked the students, go find the greatest trait. What's the greatest trait? That if a person has this trait, he has everything. One said a good eye, and one said a good heart. And he says, a good heart, that is it. And this is what we're talking about. A good heart feels the pain of another person. A good heart feels the joy of another person. A good heart feels for other people. Right? He can feel one's pain, and that same heart can also walk in Hashem's footsteps. Okay? Walk in Hashem's ways. Right? God feels our plight. He feels our pain. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to emulate the Almighty. by emulating the Almighty God who feels our pain, who feels our suffering, who knows what we're experiencing. That is what we're trying to accomplish. We're trying to be God-like. So, walking in Hashem's footsteps. It's a form of humility that allows one to be a receptacle for Torah. So if I am able to feel a friend's pain, right, it means that I'm not that great, perhaps. I have room for other people, right? I'm not so arrogant to the point, and every person needs to work. We all need to work on this, you know what, limiting ourselves to be humble enough to allow other people in, and to be a receptacle for Torah in so doing. So by allowing ourselves and making room for other people in our heart, that opens us up to being able to receive the Torah. Now, we discussed the same idea when it came to prayer. When we spoke about prayer, we spoke about the key to prayer is humility. When you realize that you need to come to God to ask for something, you need to come to God because we're missing something, we're lacking, right? Everybody's lacking. Every human being is lacking. And that's our job. Our job is to look around us, whether we're in synagogue, whether we're at a party, we're at a wedding. What do the people around me need? This one needs a word of encouragement. This one needs a smile. This one needs a pat on the back. This one needs a compliment. This one, right? Every single person around you needs something. To look around us and find the other people and what they need. Right? This makes us a receptacle for Torah. This makes us a vessel that is capable of receiving and accepting the Torah. Every person is a child of God. All right? How can we not feel the pain of one of God's children? Right? You know, and again, it's not about how do I get this off my back? You know, it's like I gave this example last time, 2 weeks ago, when we had this class. You know, I remember during the Haiti, when they had the terrible, natural disaster in Haiti. So I remember the American Red Cross, wherever you'd go into any store, they'd say, would you like to donate? Would you like to donate for Haiti? Would you like to donate for Haiti? You go to Walgreens, right? You pick up your prescription. Would you like to give a donation to Haiti? And I remember the feeling that at least I had, and I know many other people felt, is like, okay, I've just been guilted in front of all of these people, right? How can I not? Right? How can I not donate? How can I not? And then I'm done. Oh, I donated already. Yeah, I did my share. I don't have to worry about this anymore. And is that what God really wants? Is that God just wants us to, I paid my dues, leave me alone, right? I don't need to feel the pain for other people anymore. I did it already. I did my share. Or perhaps what we need to look for is, no. I didn't only give, I cried. I cried for those people who lost their homes. I cried for those people who lost their family members. You know what? Think about this regarding recently there was a terrible terrorist attack. A family sitting by a Shabbos table and a barbarian Palestinian comes in and murders 3 people at their Shabbos table. Now we need to not just say, oh, it's terrible, and move on. Right? That doesn't do it. That doesn't, when we're talking about carrying the burden for our fellow, that means we feel that pain. We are sitting at our Shabbos table and imagining the same tragedy happening to us. And crying those same tears of pain, of sorrow, of mourning with those other people. And going through all of the details of what's going on. So you hear of a friend who's ill, they're in the hospital, or they have a child who's in the hospital. It's not just, the child, I'm going to pray for them. It's think about everything that goes into that. All of the, they can't go to work now. They can't, who's going to take carpool for the other kids? Who's going to worry about their breakfast, lunch, and supper? What are they going to do for Shabbos? It's thinking about the whole, everything, not only the pain. It's not only, who can I give you a ride? Can I visit? It's the idea is getting into what the other person is experiencing. All right? So, noseh be'olim chaviro, carrying the burden with our fellow, is not just, an easy trait. It's a very difficult trait for one to really acquire to perfection. I'm certainly not perfect in it. I don't know anyone who's perfect at this, but that's life. Life is about trying to reach the greatest perfection in as many areas of life as possible. Part of noseh be'ol, of carrying the burden of our fellow, is also accepting that the people we love and the people we care about and the people we know, that they have limitations and they have flaws, and that's perfectly fine, because you know what? I'll tell you a secret. Every single one of us has limitations and has flaws. We all have limitations and flaws. We all have things that we wish nobody knew, and we wish that in a way it is sometimes courageous for people to become public figures in this, for one reason. There's not many positive things, but I'm trying to find something positive. And that is because when you become a public figure, by the way, I think this is on every level, not only in politics, but I think in any leadership role, your flaws become magnified. So it becomes magnified in everything that you do and all the people that you're involved with. So if I'm just me, my little person, I have my own, my own small business, it may not affect many other people. But if I run a big company, or if I run a city, I'm a mayor of a city, or if I'm a senator, or if I'm a president, or if I'm a prime minister, so suddenly those small flaws become very, very significant, and they become public. So, yes, we each have flaws. We all have our limitations. But are we ready to accept our fellow, our friends, our spouse, and their limitations the way we are ready to accept our own limitations? We're not. It's easy for us to to shove off our flaws and our shortcomings and say, you know what, I have many more qualities, but okay, so it's one flaw. It's not the end of the world. But when it's someone else's flaw, we're not so forgiving. It's not so easy for us to pass on it, right? And we think, everyone else needs to be perfect, right? We have to recognize that this is part of carrying our fellow's burden. It's recognizing that every person has their limitations, they have their flaws, just like each of us do. We all have our flaws. We all have our things. We wish we didn't have those flaws. We wish we didn't have, but guess what? It's part of the package. And that's why we're doing these Mussar Mondays. That's precisely why we're doing it, so that we can hopefully perfect our traits and become a better person through this process. If someone dies, we get distraught. If someone is injured, in God forbid, in critical condition, we worry. And when we hear that they're no longer in a serious situation, we're relieved. Right? We're no longer. But do we realize that that person can still be in a life-changing situation forever? The Alter from Kelm, the great elder statesman of Kelm, the Rosh Hashiva, the leader, the spiritual leader of Kelm, he would say this. He would say, yeah, we're all relieved. Oh, he was released from the hospital. That's fantastic. Oh, he may not ever be able to walk. Right? But we're done. We feel like our debt to caring for that person is over. But we need to really feel the pain of another person. And I want to conclude here with this one story. I mentioned this in the last class, and it's really telling about how important this trait is for every no matter how high we are or how low the person is that we're trying to feel that that pain or that burden of our fellow. So my grandfather arrived at the Mir Yeshiva, and he was I think 19 years old, and he came and he saw the rabbi, the leader of the yeshiva, whose name is Rabbi Yerucham Levavitz. And he was an incredible person, an incredible educator. The people who left that yeshiva were leaders of generations, leaders of communities, a really powerful educator. And an unbelievable person in his own avodat Hashem, in his own service of God, character perfection. So Friday night, my grandfather arrived on a Wednesday or on a Tuesday, and for a couple of days, he saw the Rabbi Yerucham, he saw his teacher, who soon became his Rebbe, and he'd see him, Tuesday night and Wednesday and Thursday. And then Friday comes Shabbat, and he sees somebody standing in his place where he prays in the yeshiva. So my grandfather goes over to one of his fellow students and he says, someone is sitting in the rabbi's seat. So they said, no, that's the rabbi. He said, how can it be? He looks like a different person. He said, yeah, on Shabbos he would glow. His whole face would glow. Everything, he had a shine glowing from him. One Shabbos, they said, I heard this from my grandfather, he said he looked like a dead person. Rabbi Yerucham he was colorless on his face. He looked like a dead person. He looked distraught. So the students came over to him and said, what's the matter, Rebbe? Why do you look like this? See, he said there was a Jew who lived in Germany at the time, who was a he was a terrible Jew. He did terrible things against the Jewish community, a self-loathing Jew. Didn't appreciate his Judaism, but not only didn't appreciate it, he hated the Jewish people who did observe the Torah. He hated the Jews who observed the mitzvahs. He coordinated with those who hated the Jews, who were non-Jews, to do terrible things to the Jews. He passed away that Friday. So the students are dumbfounded, and they asked the rabbi, and they said, so what are you sad about? What are you upset about? He was a terrible person. Good, he died, good riddance. So he said, no. He said, that Jew, like every other Jew, is my brother. He's my brother. Right? We're all brothers to one another. He says, he's now standing in front of the heavenly courts. And what's he going to say for himself? What is he going to say for himself? Yeah, he made mistakes. Yeah, he did some things that he shouldn't have done. But he's still my brother. And as my brother, I'm concerned about what he's going to say for himself. And it terrifies me to think of the pain that his soul is going to experience. And that's why he looked like that. So you see someone who wasn't on his spiritual level, someone who didn't live in his city, someone who had nothing to do, nothing positive to think about him. But still he felt his pain. That's what we're talking about. It's not about, it's not only about offering someone a ride and giving someone something to drink and giving charity and helping someone carry their bags and crossing someone on the street and letting a pedestrian walk in front of your car and you stop and you be more patient. It's not only that. It's so much more than that. It's thinking about the other person, about everything that they're experiencing. They need a phone call to be cheered up. I'm going to go make that phone call. They need a word of encouragement. They need a compliment. Going and looking around, the people around us all need something. Let's go find what they need and let's be that person who's there to think about them and to help carry that burden. So if you have any comments, I look forward to seeing your comments. You're welcome to like and share these videos. Thank you for joining us here tonight, and I look forward to learning many more Mussar thoughts, Mussar traits together. Next week, I'll be back in Houston. I look forward to many fantastic opportunities to learn and grow together. Thank you, and let's go feel other people's pain, other people's joy, other people's experiences. Let's get out of our own box and be the best person we can be. Thank you, and have a lovely evening, everybody. Have a good night. And so long from New Jersey.